Welcome to Hilary Talks, and today we have Eliza Johnson, who became a Humanist Celebrant in 2018 after a long career in the NHS. And to actually cut a long story short, she is my cousin. She's my cousin by marriage, although none of us were ever married. So just one of those modern family cousins. And something that we will talk about is at some point we both share a commonality, and we got married you were just shy of 50, and I think I was, I would have been 52. So we're late marriers in life. So Eliza, your 40s were a period of major change. I mean, I was just saying to you before we started this interview that I really started to feel like I had agency in my life in my 40s. Everything up until my 40s kind of happened to me. And in my 40s, I started to make specific decisions. Some of them good, some of them not so good. And your 40s have been you've turned your life inside out in your 40s. So you started with a career in the NHS as a
clinical psychologist,
that's right. And then you upped sticks, took yourself off on a gap year, you're kind of calling it, to Spain, and have turned yourself along that road into a humanist celebrant. So tell me a little bit about your 40s.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me to come along and talk to you today. I think we're cousins by choice, which I think is rather than birth and family. So I think that's even more special. My 40s, I'd spent a lot of my 30s as a single parent, studying to become a clinical psychologist, very much under the patriarchal cosh to perform and being evaluated at every stage of everywhere I turned in my career and my life, I guess. So it felt quite pressured, and I didn't feel that I had much agency. I felt that I was performing to please other people a lot of the time. When I turned 40, I think my career was more established, my daughter was more settled, and I'd met Richard, who's now my husband, and after a long time of being a single parent, that was quite a huge event for me, sort of personally. But I had a really nice house, nice friends, and I was very settled in the Midlands at that time, and really began to sort of settle into my own skin, if you like, not feeling so answerable and feeling much more, I had much more choice, and I was much more enabled to make choices that I needed to do in my life rather than things I had to do to make money or to please other people, basically. So it was a really nice sort of watershed period for me. I think, also my body was in quite good shape as well.
Which led you to produce another child, did it not?
I did. Richard and I, when my daughter was 18, Richard and I was 42, Richard and I had a little boy. And the pregnancy was amazing, because I knew what to expect, I think. And I think my body was just stronger in some way. I don't know how or why. But it was a great pregnancy, and I was just absolutely delighted to have this little newborn little peach that I my late bloom.
So you became a mother again in your mid-40s, and I don't know if we shouldn't use the word better. Has it been easier? I guess you're in partnership, and that has pros and cons to parenting, because when you are the parent, you get to make all the decisions. Obviously, you don't get to share some of the weight of it. So you've had to change your parenting style this second time.
Yeah, definitely. Richard's a really involved dad, and I would say that in many ways, because my career was kind of taking off, he retired. He's a bit older than me, and he retired, and so actually he took on a lot more of the kind of everyday parenting, to enable me to go off and you know, develop my career and work silly long hours and things. My first partner wasn't reliable or stable in any way, so this was a complete change for me to have someone who was a grown-up and who could take it on board and guide our son in a fantastic way. And it was a breath of fresh air, really. So I felt really comfortable to share the role. I think I probably missed out a little bit, if I'm honest, in really being able to sort of embrace motherhood in my 40s. But I don't feel I've missed out too much, because he was so fantastic at the job.
Oh, motherhood, you know, it's such a double-edged sword, isn't it? Because on the one hand, I spent huge amounts of my time feeling overwhelmed by what it entailed. And then the other side of me comes away feeling like, you know, I wasn't good enough, I should have done more, I didn't play with them enough, if only. And I'm hoping that if I get the opportunity to become a grandma, I'll be able to do all the things that I would have loved to have done with my children, which is take time, essentially. I never felt like I had time. For some reason, in those 20s and 30s, I rushed. And this pandemic that we're in right now, we were talking about that. It's really, 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 really wonderful to slow down. And that's the other thing about moving into my 50s. I just do things, I get everything I want done, but I just do it more slowly and more mindfully, that very modern word, mindfully, but so much more effectively.
Yeah, I mean, the lockdown has been amazing. I'm in Spain at the moment, so it's been really, really restrictive over here. And Theo's at school, doing homeschooling, and it's just been amazing just to be able to spend all day, every day together in the house. And we're belly laughing all the way, you know, several times a day. And it's just a joy, actually. It's a gift to be able to have this time, really. So I'm trying to make the most of it, because I think it will come out of it soon. And hopefully we won't revert back to the way things were, but you know, I'm just taking it for the gift that it is right now.
So you decided at some point that you were going to leave your career in the NHS, and you reinvented yourself as a married woman, mother of a young boy, and you decided, I'm going to become a humanist celebrant and move country simultaneously, or pretty much all within 2 or 3 years you did that. So what have you found about being a humanist celebrant? I mean, that's an entirely new career. Obviously, you've brought all those things that you learned of how to listen and how to negotiate, and how much work do you do with your couples before the actual ceremony, talking to them about how relationships work, and how much of your previous training gets woven in?
Well, I think a lot, because I spend a lot of time with the couples beforehand, you know, learning about who they are and what their relationship's about and what they want from their marriage going forward. So, you know, I don't consciously bring my psychology persona into that, but I've spent so long being a psychologist, I think it is.
Yeah, you can't. It's in you. It's in your blood. Excuse me, I'm just letting the dog out. I'm right here. Get out, you bugger. Never make films with dogs and small children.
No.
It comes in.
It's intrinsic to who I am, and the importance of relationship and relating in relationships and especially in marriages. So yeah, I bring that in, and I spend quite a bit of time in the lead up to the ceremony, getting to know and understand the couples and what they want, because the ceremonies are very individually sort of tailored for each person. They've got to feel right, you know, what the rituals that we get involved in and the words that are said. They've got to sit comfortably with the people that are going through the ceremony. So spend a lot of time with people, getting to kind of know and understand them. And I think I've maybe got some skills that I'm bringing from my previous training into that relationship as well.
Mm. So you're doing weddings and renewal of vows ceremonies, and so you're doing ceremonies with people who are starting, well, not necessarily starting, but making a statement about their relationship.
Yeah.
Do you, or are you going to do funerals, deaths?
Well, I had booked in to do my training on with funerals, because all the celebrants that I know, that I've got to know, say that by far the funeral celebrancy is the most rewarding.
Interesting.
Yeah, yeah. For me, at this stage in my life and my career, it's not right for me. I've, as you know, got quite an extensive loss history myself. I cry often, cry at the wedding, so I'm not convinced that I'm in the right state of mind or place at the moment to do funeral or celebrations of life and funerals. I will do it at some point. I think I've got a lot to bring to that role, but for me right now, I wanted really to embrace joy and people in a kind of positive transitional phase.
Well, and your NHS career was an awful lot around ageing and end of life process, wasn't it? So you were working with, I was calling them elders. That's my Americanism coming through. You're calling them aged adults.
Older adults.
Yeah. Older adults. You were working with older adults. So how do you feel about aging? So especially now that you are in your 50s and, you know, God willing, we've got another 20, 30 years of good health ahead of us. But how do you feel about aging? How do you think, talking about the UK, we handle aging as a nation? And what advice have you got on the subject, oh wise cousin Eliza? Put you on the spot.
Well, in terms of what society in our culture, how they regard older people, I think it's not good, really. I think there's a lot of ageism and stigma around. I think possibly more so for women. Becoming older, aging, having grey hair, having wrinkles, things going south is not venerated or revered the way in other cultures it is. I think our kind of socio-political systems kind of embed that even further, and a lot of women are living in poverty as they age, and all the health problems that brings alongside living into older age too. So I think there are a lot of challenges to aging that are not internal. I think aging is a fantastic thing. We become more wise as we age, and certainly when I was working mental health services for older people, I was always incredibly impressed by the resilience, despite the face of everything that a lot of the people I work with were facing, that actually at no time in their life did they face the challenges of loss and change and identity management and failing health, loss of role, all these things that people face. But on the whole, they were able to rise to the challenge and utilize a lot of the coping skills and mechanisms that they'd developed throughout their lives. And they brought that forward into older age. So it's got an awful lot to give and to offer. And I just wish that there was wider acceptance and embracing of the gifts of aging.
So we need to signpost that more, don't they? That for me is a lot of the work that I'm wanting to do around menopause, and that's why I'm wanting to talk to people who are have started to make big changes in their 40s. I mean, there's that saying, isn't there? Youth is wasted on the young. And it's so true, because we squander it. We do squander it, and that's not a criticism, it's just that's a reality, because when you have plenty, you just assume that it's always going to be there, and then we start to manage our resources, and in managing it, and as so many of us are finding in this pandemic, the more we simplify our lives, the more joy we find. And those belly laughs that you're talking about, that you're having, when we were all rushing in and out, trying to, you know, hit the timetables and make sure the dinner was on the table and homework is done and do all our work things, I think it was, joy was a lot more difficult to hang on to. You had to be reminded, I had to be reminded to stop and smell the coffee or the roses or the whatever it is I'm supposed to be smelling. So that, for me, that's such a thing about aging, is that it's the access to joy that seems to me to be increasing every year I get older. I have more access to joy.
Absolutely. I do think there are shifts in perception now about aging, and they're talking about the University of the Third Age and things like this. And so I think that, our perception of a very stigmatized view of what aging means is shifting and is changing. There's still a lot we have to do as a society to enable our older people to live, healthier, more engaged, more connected lives in communities, whether they've got dementia or any other long-term condition, health condition, because loneliness, I think, is the single biggest challenge facing older people. But things are changing. What is it they say? 50 is the new 40.
40, yeah, whatever.
So we're moving the scale along.
Yeah.
We are all living longer, so we have to bloody wise up.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we are all living longer, and that's the baby boomer generation. We're Generation X, and we just had that huge spike in population, and now we're all having to reinvent the wheel. And I love my dad, who is 90 years old, and he just nods and he doesn't say anything, and it's just like, yes, we already knew this. We all feel like we're, discovering it for the first time. And we look at young people in their 20s and we just think, oh, we already knew that. And my dad, I know, looks at me from 90 to 50 going, yes, this has already been there. So every generation thinks that, we're inventing things for the first time, but I don't know. I wonder how different we all are as humans anyhow. So elder role models in your life, perimenopause, menopause. Your mother died when you were in your 20s?
Yeah, 27. Yeah.
27. So you lost your mum, but I know that you had a grandmother who, we could write a book about that woman. So she was a powerful older role model, but I doubt she spoke to you much about menopause.
Nothing. Nothing. My mum had a twin sister, as you know, and when I started having irregular periods and sort of black moods and hot flushes and not really understanding what the fuck was going on, and was I becoming depressed because I'd left the NHS or made too many changes too quickly? When I burst into tears because Richard had brought the wrong size of bread, and I flew into a rage and burst into tears, and I thought, hold on a minute, I started to join the dots a little bit. I had to contact Madeline, my nearest female relative.
Yeah.
When did you start your pen? I mean, she's physiologically very different from me, but I thought she's the only one that I'm able to get any kind of gauge. And unfortunately, she said, she didn't start the menopause until she was 55. Well, I was only, 52 at the time. So I was like, oh, what, is it that? But it is.
Yes, it is. And that's something that I encourage every woman to do, from your 40s onwards. Younger, talk to your mother, your female relatives about what their experience was, because we do need those guidelines. We really do, because this is just a story that I hear all the time. I was in my late 40s, was in my early 50s, and I was losing it over a loaf of bread. And then it's kind of like, this isn't about the loaf of bread, is it? But one of the things that continuously astounds me as women is every month we have this cycle that is whatever, 28 days, 32 days. Every month we have a period. It's like a shock. It's like, you know, you go, oh, it's my period, that's why I was so tired, or whatever it was. Oh, it's my period. So we spend an entire 25, 30 years or whatever being shocked by our mood circling each month. And then we hit our late 40s or our 50s, and we're none the wiser. It's just like, that's my drum to beat, is to help women recognize that we are hormonal, cyclical creatures. And when we put that frame on our lives, it helps us understand so much more about what's going on. So you were really pretty much without a role model for perimenopausal, and thank goodness you had Madeline to talk to, even though her experience was different. But how did you feel when because you had a young child, so Theo would only have been, 9, 10, whatever, 11 when you started to change. So the outward view of your life was you were newlywed, you had a young child, you were making all these changes. So in so many ways, your life was one picture, but internally and hormonally, you were being driven by a very different clock. How did that feel then? And how does it feel now that you've got a little bit of water under the bridge?
Yeah. I think because there had been so many changes I was making, like leaving a career of 23 years, embarking on a new one, shaving all my hair off and embracing the grey, the white, just stopping what I was doing. I really did. I really wondered what it was, whether it was actually just too much change. So I was baffled. I was completely baffled. But when the penny dropped, and I did have a lot of suicidal thoughts as well. So I'd be, walking in the park, looking at trees, thinking, oh, I could hang myself from that. And they were quite frightening thoughts. And of course, because of my background, I was thinking, shit, I'm becoming clinically depressed here. But actually, when I did join the dots and made sense of it, it was just that everything happened at the same time. And when I made sense of it, it helped. I started looking at the flock and doing research around it, and sort of using that as a framework for understanding what was going on with me, rather than a mental health kind of narrative. It just made so much more sense. I'm a psychologist. I tend to psychologize everything, and sometimes I miss out the biological or underplay the biological influences, which are massive.
Yeah, massive. And that's that's what holistic health is about, isn't it? It's about allowing for both those stories to run along. And for me, when I'm so I come from the kind of hippie holistic health place, and I have to be careful not to kind of go, no, don't take antidepressants, just go meditate and take some vitamin B supplements. And the truth of the matter is we have to walk both those paths really carefully together. And it depends so much on the external things that's happening in your life. If you're able to sit in the woods and meditate and eat organic and be all that, then great, do it. But if you're actually having to hit targets, you're having to work, earn money, raise the family, deal with elder parents or whatever, then sometimes you need to take pharmaceutical things to support you.
I did take a trial of one of the antidepressants, Cipramil or I think. I took it for about 2 or 3 months. Bizarrely, I don't know if it was placebo, but bizarrely that seemed to really help with my hot flushes. I guess the hot flushes were the kind of axiom which on my decision tree about whether it was a kind of a low-grade depression or maybe a moderate depression, or whether it was actually more kind of menopausal, influenced by what was going on in the life. And so I took a short trial of the antidepressant for about 3 or 4 months, and it really did help with the flushes. at the time?
Well, you know, this is the thing, and for other women who are at this phase in life, sometimes HRT is what's going to really, really help you. And that will help with the depression and the anxiety and all of those thoughts. And other times, yes, it's anti-anxiety medication, and that helps with the physiological thoughts. But the point is you need to have someone who's taking an overview, and we need to be educated, because all too often women get put on one and ignore the other. And so, yeah, moving forward, I hope that our daughters, when they get to this place, have a very, very, I mean, certainly they're going to have us for sure, going, as we will. But I do hope that women, even in the next 10 years, are going to have a different experience to us, because, you know, you were happy, you had a wonderful life, everything was opening up and changing, and all of those things that we're talking about agency, but you were having suicidal thoughts. And I really appreciate you sharing that, because that's the story of so many of us. You know, and not enough of us will talk about it.
So I mean, it was frightening, but you know, they passed. And again, I think once I had the framework for understanding what was happening, I came off the antidepressants and just looked more at diet, lifestyle, kind of riding them out. So what if
menopause, perimenopause is a mini death. You know, that's one of the things we talk about. It's a series of mini deaths. It's losses, and you know, then you get the rebirth afterwards. But it is, so, you know, I could go on about this for flipping ages with you, but I won't. So you weren't prepared, but you wised up very quickly, and you now find yourself, you have upped career, moved to Spain just in time to arrive in Spain and get locked down for the pandemic. You know, that was not what you were intending.
Excellent timing.
Excellent timing. So you are in your early 50s now, and do you feel like you still have as many ambitions, and do you feel like your life is opening up or closing down?
Oh, completely opening up. I've never felt freer in my entire life than I do now. I'm not, well, don't get me wrong, I still have the critical voice and the limiting beliefs, but I just notice them and go fuck you. I'm doing it anyway. And I've come out to Spain. I've bought a little finca in the mountains that I'm renovating. I'm determined I'm going to crack the Spanish language. It's so much harder than I thought, but I'm enjoying learning about it. I am working hard to develop networks of people out here, so I can bring humanist ceremonies out to southern Spain, which is a bit of a challenge, if I'm honest. I'm not sure the population's ready, but you know, here I am, and here I am staying, and it's going well. Well, it was before lockdown, so I feel very motivated and hopeful about what I can achieve out here. My health's good. I'm loving the lifestyle, and you know, I've got another set of challenges to face, but you know, I'm up for it. Well up for it.
Wow. So thank you very much for taking the time to share with me today. And I guess the take-home message is, you know, everyone says life starts at 40. Life starts whenever you want. You know, I think really life starts every morning when I get out of bed. It's just like, okay, here we go, another day. But if you told me that when I was in my 30s, that once I was in my mid-50s, I was going to be starting new things and, you know, getting married. We haven't even gone down that road, but I just want to say to anyone out there who's thinking of getting married in your late 40s and 50s, Eliza is your celebrant. Do it. It's just the best. Because, let's just quickly talk about getting married. The thing that I loved about getting married at this age was that the wedding was exactly how I wanted it to be. Whereas I looked at people in their 20s or even their 30s, and they're having to do weddings the way their parents want it, or the way later weddings are the way to go. That's where the coolest people are, surely.
Well, definitely, and doing the wedding your way and not being constrained by traditions and rules. If they don't fit for you, you don't have to do them. There are other ways to do it.
Mm.
And there are other ways to do it to bring family on board and involve them and you know, make them part of it. It doesn't have to be a binary either or.
Mm.
You can do both. It just being, it helped me so much in terms of my sense of security and
Yeah, I know. I was so surprised about that. I was really surprised about how it changed my feeling of security, because
yeah.
obviously we can get divorced tomorrow. It's just like we are in reality no more secure, but for some reason, having made this commitment with Kengo, yeah, it's a very interesting thing, marriage.
I
I
think
never
there's
thought I'd
something
do
very
it.
powerful about standing there and saying in front of your family and friends, I take you, and psychologically there is, I was always committed to the relationship, but I don't want to be divorced. I will work harder
Mm-hmm.
not to get there.
Mm.
It's maybe not as easy just to walk away
Mm.
when you get fed up. I don't know, but it's the best thing that's ever happened to me.
Yeah, next thing I'll be voting Conservative. No, I won't. I'm saying this to
coming over to sort you out if you go down that path.
I promise I won't. Yeah, there we go. Nailed my political affiliation to YouTube. All right then, honey. So thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me, and I shall look forward to seeing you again soon. I hope that we get to come and visit you in Spain at some point. And in the meantime, keep doing your wonderful work. For anyone who's interested, she has a website which I will leave underneath, and also does rather gorgeous Zoom celebration relationships for some of the clients that have had to cancel their weddings. So who knew Zoom? Who knew we could all do this on Zoom?
Amazing.
Yeah. So magical times can be had with Eliza, and in Spain and in England, and starting in your 40s, life just gets better. They're right.
Definitely does.
Thank you very much, Eliza, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.